Hey guys, thanks for checking out the video. First things first, this is not going to be an attempt to dunk on efficient players or anything like that. Everybody has their own way of playing, and that's totally cool. These are merely some observations and thoughts from a longtime mediocre RuneScape player. So, what is efficiency? It's defined simply as achieving a goal with minimal time and energy waste. Efficiency has always existed in some form on RuneScape. Back in 2006, you could get made fun of for firing mithril bolts, for example, out of your crossbow instead of adamant or above. Another example is not using the dragon longsword to train strength and instead choosing the scimitar. However, I don't think that's what people are referring to when they say RuneScape has become more like a job with spreadsheets and hyper efficiency. What I think most players are talking about when they roll their eyes and talk about efficiency is this trend that has popped up in the last decade or so and has become more and more popular since then. It's actually existed for more than a decade, probably, but you get where I'm coming from. Before I delve into tick manipulation and other efficient tactics, I'd like to insert here that the uptick in efficiency started around the release of skill capes. That would be toward the back end of 2006, around October to be exact. Before skill capes, there was no real reason to go for 199, let alone multiple. Sure, a player could go for high score rankings before the release of skill capes, but that wasn't as cool to most players. Most players want visual prestige. For some examples of this still existing, let's look at some of the most treasured modern items in the game currently. The Infernal Cape, the Zuck Slayer Helmet, and the Max Cape. Ornament kits from the new raid released in 2022 are further examples of this. In 2006 and for a few years beyond, the Skill Cape was one of these items. To put it simply, you couldn't take a high score ranking to Varrock Square to show it off, and it damn sure couldn't perform a cool emote. I'm sure y'all remember seeing the high level players being followed and pestered to perform those rarely seen cape emotes. Maybe some of you guys were the ones being pestered. Continuing on, now that there was a visual prestigious item, players started trying to maximize the abysmal XP rates in 2006 to get one. They found out which skills were the easiest 99s and which ones were the more difficult ones. Optimization began and things started being broken down into XP per hour rate shortly after. Still, as a player around 2005 and beyond, I didn't notice a widespread uptick in efficiency until a few years afterward. Let's move on to the next topic. Utilizing ticks, not the gross, disgusting bugs, but game ticks. This is also known as tick manipulation. Let me explain what that is. A tick is 0.6 seconds, which can vary with server lag and a few other factors. If a player is fast enough, they can interrupt certain animations with other actions and finish a subsequent action faster, granting more XP per hour through extra effort with constant clicking. Technically, this is a form of glitch and was not originally intended within the game. However, Jagex has stated in the past that due to the extra effort involved, they deem it now balanced and accepted. Now, there are a few reasons a person might want to utilize game ticks through tick manipulation. One, they're competing for a top spot on the high scores and therefore have to in order to get the best XP rates to compete with others. Two, they want to mimic popular players and be seen as good by their peers. Three, they are strapped for time and want the most XP out of the smallest amount of playtime. And lastly, number four, they enjoy it. The first person I was able to narrow down the popularization of game ticks to was a player named Zarfot and his post on the RuneScape forums about them around 2007 to 2008. Now, this is not to say Zarfot was the originator of this mechanic. This is the same player that ended up reaching 2.3 bill overall experience and at one point was number 2 in the game overall. But, like I usually say, when something is popularized by somebody, it typically didn't originate from them. There were more than likely plenty of players that knew how to harness game ticks to their advantage before Zarfot and just didn't document their findings, or maybe they wanted to keep it to themselves. Regardless, in the years since this posting, the utilization of game ticks became popular amongst the higher level community and spread via video tutorials and word of mouth. This mindset slowly bled down into the regular player base as some wanted to be like the higher level elites and they too began using these mechanics. As the years went on, platforms such as Twitch and YouTube have become more and more popular and many of the top content creators and streamers can be seen utilizing game ticks while training skills, bossing, and PKing. This allowed the mindset to spread to even more players as it became more normalized. This was ramped up even further due to efficiency being measured in terms of things like EHP. EHP stands for efficient hours played and gives a visual number to a player's efficiency, so to speak. The more efficient players have even created playlists that have the correct BPM or beats per minute to help them keep track of their tick manipulation, although from what I gather these are more useful to those trying to get the muscle memory down. As I briefly went over, this mentality extends to PvM as well via the prayer flicking mechanic. It's important to note right here that this initially was seen as a bug but was later accepted as a legitimate game mechanic. In 2019, 2019, former Jagex moderator Mod Wolf stated during a Q&A that it was accepted as a legitimate method and therefore they started balancing bosses around it.
Have been like, oh, well, you should nerf prayer flicking as well. We accept prayer flicking as a legitimate method. In fact, we've now balanced bosses specifically around flicking prayer, right? Yeah. I mean, LNS is, at the moment, before it's redesigned, purely based on prayer flicking, right?
Inferno springs to mind.
Inferno 2, or like also if you're going through, to keep your supplies, you're probably going to be prayer flicking. Like that to us is a legitimate thing in game. That is like a skill cap thing, and we like that. So we're not going to be changing that. When it comes to things like 3-ticking as well, we've had this before on this couch as well. It's not so 3-ticking is a bit of a weirder one, but still our belief is that is, you're getting a not substantial increase in experience for most things. It's a good chunk, but it's not ridiculously over the top, and we think if you want to put that extra effort in, you deserve that extra XP. Yeah. The only thing that we try to do is when we release new content is try and avoid introducing new methods because we don't want to accidentally lie about experience that we've pulled, and then a 3-tick come out and change the...
Prayer flicking involves quickly switching your protection prayer against enemies that utilize multiple corners of the combat triangle. The most simple example is Grardor. He uses range and melee. Most players when they fight General Grardor can't protect melee and therefore are susceptible to being hit by his range attack, which can hit in the 30s and drain supplies. The top players found that if they switched between melee and range protection prayer at specific times, they could mitigate damage from both styles. By the time in-game PvM challenges such as the Inferno came into the game, prayer flicking and tick manipulation were well known. The Inferno awards the player with the best in slot cape for the melee style, and while you don't have to prayer flick to complete the Inferno, it's highly recommended to do so in order to save supplies. Prayer flicking also evolved to be more intense with 1-tick flicking, which seems to just be a quicker form of prayer flicking, with the less intense form being referred to as lazy flicking. In my opinion, I believe eventually this unintended mechanic will not just be a recommendation, but a requirement for future content. Of course, that's just speculation on my part. I very well could be wrong, as I have been in the past. Another form of utilizing ticks is through tick eating. This seems to involve range and magic attacks where the damage is calculated prior to actually being applied to a player's health. An example could be sitting at 1 HP, letting damage calculate, but then eating right before the damage is actually applied to your character. You only get hit for that 1 HP you initially had, and you survive. While some people wouldn't view this as normal efficiency, I'm throwing it in too, as I believe if prayer flicking is going to be required for in-game PvM in the coming years, eventually this will be too. The last part of the video is going to be pretty short, but it relates to squeezing efficiency out of the game via spreadsheets. It seems like a lot of players now utilize Microsoft Excel and other spreadsheet software to keep track of dailies and input other useful data. While there is nothing wrong with doing this, it does show an evolution in the player base. Now it's y'all's turn. Do you think these efficiency factors are just due to the overall player base becoming older and valuing their time more? Or do you all think there's something else at play? Basically, is it the game that has evolved or the player base that has evolved? Do you guys think it's healthy for the game long term, as in do you think it reinvigorated players to learn new mechanics, or is it going to ruin the game long term? Do you guys think new players will see these mechanics such as tick manipulation and prayer flicking and continue playing, or do you think they'll get discouraged and drop the game? I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. RuneScape Historian, out.